So without further ado, I'd like to pass over to Nick to take the meeting forward. Thank you.
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Lovely to see you all. I'm just going to share my screen and run a presentation, if that's okay. So yes, Nicola's referred to the piece of work done back in 2018 on community-led housing, a key role for local authorities. It's a very good, useful read and still current in many respects. I mean, I'm just going to quickly run through a few key points about this. So some of the issues about why we think local authorities support community-led housing. Well, you know, it's about housing supply for most local authorities. And I think that one of the things we found with community-led housing, it's often building homes that actually wouldn't other be built unless they were community-led. You know, there's all sorts of weird and wonderful ways to deal with funding and affordability issues. And I just put in brackets there exemptions. One of the things about forms of community-led housing, you know, especially, you know, fully mutual co-op, community land trusts, you know, enjoy exemptions from things like right to buy and the right to shared ownership that's just coming in. There's also, you know, some schemes being developed through regeneration and using empty homes. I think one of the key things about what our sector does, it is very much more than just about housing issues. Brainstorming in a recent session, and we were talking about employability, you know, tackling isolation, very important post-COVID, and there are many, you know, positive stories about how community-led housing organisations have been supporting memberships and people in their community during the COVID period. And obviously building community and individual skills, very important. And it's also, you know, it's about empowering residents to address housing need and, you know, enabling people to sort of use their imagination at a local level to provide homes that maybe otherwise wouldn't. In terms of what's possible, well, you know, I think, you know, from our sector, what we found is there is a really wide range of possibilities. This can, you know, community-led housing can be about a range of different tenures, different income levels, can be about small-scale schemes, can be about larger-scale schemes, can be about new builds, can be about bringing empty homes back into use. We say generally no more difficult to develop community-led housing than other housing. I mean, that's the bit about actually building the homes. It's generally the same sort of processes, that similar processes. I mean, there's obviously issues to do with building groups on that sort of side of it. But we've just published a set of case studies, and the link to that is down below. And I think we'll probably be sharing the slides after the thing. And the case studies, and we just flag up with these case studies what we call the art of the possible. You know, because there's story after story where, you know, communities have been met with difficult challenges, but, you know, they've just found ways around things and developed some fantastic schemes. And that's kind of what we're trying to stimulate here. We've kind of, you know, in terms of the sort of national network, because my organisation, the CCH, is part of a group of different organisations that support community-led housing nationally. And between us and working with the Ministry for Housing and local government, we've identified 3 primary routes for developing community-led housing, 3 grassroots groups, obviously. Great, you know, great when that happens, but it's, you know, challenging in time. Existing community organisations, some of them, you know, already doing housing and some of them not, or, you know, start, you know, deciding to develop schemes. So I personally live in a housing co-op, and my housing co-op is currently working with Birmingham City Council on developing some new homes. And then the third, why it's ABA, sorry about that, is what we call developer-led partnerships, which is where, you know, a local authority, a housing association or other organisations just decide that they're going to try and set up a community-led scheme, and then work is done to recruit and develop founder members. And so, you know, for example, there's a scheme in Leeds, for example, where an organisation called Leeds Community Homes was asked by Leeds City Council to develop a particular site and so on, and, you know, they tried to assemble a community group, but that wasn't possible at that time for various reasons. But they're now going ahead and developing that scheme, and then their work will be done to sort of bring in the founder members in what is quite a challenging area, and, you know, that Leeds City Council, you know, make use of the site in the way that Leeds Community Homes will be doing. In terms of what you know, where we are with resources on this. I think one of the key things to stress actually is that, you know, if we were talking about 2 or 3 years back, one of the challenges we had, there wasn't many people who could advise people on how to set up community-led housing schemes. And because of the work we've been doing over the years, over the last 2 or 3 years, there is now a lot of people out there who can help to make these things happen. So it's not quite as challenging to develop community-led housing schemes as it was. So, you know, the CCH in particular, we've been working on a training and accreditation program, which means there's now about 100 accredited advisors available. There's also local hubs being set up in all the regions of the country where support can be provided from. Nicola's referred already to this, and many of the people here are part of this, is the community-led housing local authority group. So we were asked by some of the representatives from local authorities to set up this group. And it's basically a means by which people from local authorities can get together, share ideas, share thoughts and best practice about how to do things, and generally be able to sort of liaise with each other. It is open to officers and to members. Most of the people are officers because it's quite a very practical sort of group, but we welcome both. And there's currently 56 local authorities now signed up, and that seems to be growing quite often. And so we would encourage any of you who are on the call today who aren't signed up, please do sign up. I mean, there's no cost to it. It's just basically, you know, somebody's got to be interested in the principle of community-led housing and just get in touch with us and we will put you on the database. In terms of where we are now in terms of access to capital funding, obviously we had the spending review yesterday. There was something called the Community Housing Fund, which sadly is no more. We're actually waiting to hear that there may, I mean, you know, community-led housing schemes can access other capital funding programs as, you know, in the same way as anybody else. And we think that there may be some other funding available to community-led housing, because and we'll find that out over the next few days. But in terms of, you know, one of the key things to mention is that, you know, people will be aware of the social housing white paper, which specifically mentioned, you know, community-led housing, and that the government supports the principle of it, and, you know, that they're looking to see how they're going to support it in the future. In terms of what local authorities can do to support, well, we'll be hearing some excellent stories in a few minutes about what local authorities have been doing, but we just point to, well, strategic support. So, you know, myself in Birmingham, we've worked with Birmingham City Council on developing a really exciting sort of strategic policy on how to develop community-led housing. Being there to provide vision and facilitation to people to help to make things happen. Identifying land and buildings. That it's not about, you know, just getting people, you know, local authorities land and having it for free and so on. It works, you know, obviously, but just helping to identify what is available, but helping to build partnerships, you know, because often community-led housing needs to work in partnership with housing associations, perhaps, and, you know, local authorities can use their make those kind of partnerships happen, or with private developers as well. There are sort of schemes where that's happened. Supporting funding. I mean, you know, obviously that's a key issue, and, you know, one of the issues that's been sort of going around the sector is whether local authorities can use their public sector works or Loan Board Act funding to help community-led housing schemes to develop. And then the final bit I've just identified is sort of, you know, there are some interesting, I mean, obviously one of the key issues for local authorities is how do you house the homeless people on your register, and that's really important. But I just, you know, there have been some really good discussions with some councils about how the nomination process can work and so on for you and for the community-led housing organisation. So that's me. I've just done a real thumbnail, quick whistle-stop tour of community-led housing. But let's hear now from people who are actually working with, you know, through local authorities to actually make things happen. So let's start out with Chris, Councillor Chris Penberthy, who's from Plymouth City Council. Tell us your take on community-led housing. Where are you, Chris?
There we go. Thanks, Nick. And thanks for the invite to speak. Community-led housing, I think, is a journey, and it's always good to share learning and experience. In fact, Nick, you might remember you came down to, or we had lots of conversations in 2012-13, and you came down to Plymouth in 2013 to meet RPs and community groups and people interested in self-build and all sorts of other things. to work with us and support the thought of cooperative and community-led housing as we developed what is now an award-winning plan for homes. We've come a long way since then, both locally, but I think also nationally, and a lot of the things you've just been talking about weren't around back in those days, and if they had been, it might have been easier for us, but we've been on that journey with you. I'm pleased that we've got Liz Dunster on the call today. Liz is leads on this area of work within our housing delivery team, and actually was involved with Nick back in those days. So we got that happening for us. We support community-led housing because we believe it brings a range of social, economic and health benefits. And we believe it's our communities themselves who have the best knowledge of what is required in their area. Although Plymouth is a city, it's actually made up of many smaller communities, similar to villages, either because they were villages historically or they were built post-war in effect to be villages. So people have really strong senses of community around the city, as well as of being from the city itself. And where people have that strong sense of community, they don't wish to move to other communities. They want to stay where they are, and so do their families. Today, I just wanted to draw some strands together from the community-led housing projects that we are currently supporting, just to give you a flavour of some of those and what we're doing. Many of our communities were built almost exclusively as 3-bedroomed houses during the era of high delivery of council housing. Much of that in Plymouth was a result of the devastating impact of the Blitz, which left effectively about half of our residents in need of housing, a problem that took decades after the war to resolve. And the story of Plymouth Blitz not being told is one that we could explore at depth in other times. But that was a big issue, but why we have so many purpose-built villages within the city. Obviously, Right to Buy has radically reduced the potential affordable housing stock in those communities and made it harder for us to be flexible. So the North Prospect redevelopment, which wasn't a community-led housing initiative because it was so massive and still going on, has been made much more complex because of that Right to Buy issue. We now have many older people whose children have left home. They want to downsize. There isn't necessarily the housing in the communities that they want to live in. But similarly, grown-up children who wish to leave the family home and stay in the area, as in their community, not move to a different community. And those all form tensions that we'd like to help to resolve, but actually the community knows what it needs. We think community-led housing can help the process of providing the right homes in the right size, in the right place, while meeting other needs such as accessibility and addressing fuel poverty. In the city, we support 4 community economic development trusts across the most deprived areas of the city. These give communities ownership of a grassroots asset-based approach to developing their local community economy and addressing local employment issues. Together, they have assets valued substantially in excess of £10 million and an annual turnover of, once again, substantially more than £1 million a year. That asset is asset that the council has released and supported them to develop. The Millfields Trust, one of those, is based in my own ward. It's now bringing forward a community-led, residential-led mixed-use scheme that will provide over 40 homes, community facilities and employment spaces. The Millfields Trust views decent housing as one of the key ways they can meet the economic well-being needs of their community. We recently provided the funding for Millfields to acquire the land needed to do that and begin the feasibility work, and we're providing them support as they go through the process. And we know it's not just geographical communities that are looking to provide housing, but also communities of interest. Plymouth Energy Community has set up a community-led community benefit society to look specifically at housing, so PEC homes, to join the Plymouth Energy Community family. They are looking to provide net zero carbon homes and to build new eco-aware communities across the city. We're working with them on the first of those, and ably supported, as Nick has said, by some of that support that's now available. We're working with the Cornwall Community Land Trust on that one. But that's really positive. And we're currently working on our second Veterans SelfBuild scheme, which is just about to start on site, not only providing housing for veterans, but also involving them in the build and providing training to enable them to start a career in construction or to give them the skills to work in other places. All of those are working on land being released through our plan for homes, and enabling funding is part of the mix, as well as the support of both Liz and other housing delivery team staff. Community-led housing doesn't just provide homes. Being involved in a community housing group means people learn new transferable skills which can improve their personal and work lives. Being part of such a group helps people's mental health, as it gives a sense of purpose and achievement, combats loneliness, which is especially important at this moment. And as Nick says, some of those come from the community and some are supported by us to come forward. In 1987, the residents of Pembroke Street came together and began the process of taking control of their estate. I see Nick nodding because actually it is a successful cooperative tenant management organisation working what was a council estate, now part of the Plymouth Community Homes portfolio. They are really successful, and they're now working with us and Plymouth Community Homes on extending their estate to give them more homes in their management, but will also revitalise community facilities that are currently run down and improve the general place setting that they have. We own the community facilities and some of the public realm that is pretty run down at the moment, that we're putting into the mix of that. Community-led housing is part of the Resurgam programme, which we are taking forward to kickstart our economy post-COVID, not just in terms of same old, but coming out of it, building better, as they talk about, or building green or whatever, but actually giving people control again. We know that the community groups will spend most of their money locally, provide work for local SMEs and housing for local people. The fact that they're not affected by the housing market in the same way as volume house builders means that they can continue working where volume house builders might be getting a bit nervous about the state of the market. And they'll add to our housing delivery numbers and show new models that people can see as sustainable and viable, and hopefully always built to high standard as well. So that's really good for us. It meets our housing agenda, and it contributes to our mission to make Plymouth a fairer city where everyone does their bit. So just as a quick sort of where it all fits for us. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Chris. That's really good. That's a really good start. I mean, and it's quite an honour to hear that I had a little bit of a hand. I do remember coming down to see it a time ago, but I'm glad to hear that things have really kicked off since then. That sounds a really good array of sort of stuff. Yeah, great, excellent. So, okay, so we'll zip over the country now to East Suffolk, and Stephanie Baxter from East Suffolk Council is going to talk to us about what's going on over there. Stephanie, are you with us?
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity to speak with you about East Suffolk's council work with community-led housing groups. My name is Stephanie Baxter, and I'm the Housing Enabling Manager. So who are we and where are we? We are the most easterly part of England, and a combination of the former Waveney and the former Suffolk coastal councils, and we became East Suffolk last year. We are a rural district with a strong agricultural sector, a coastline with beaches and shipping lanes, together with our own nuclear power station and energy sector. We have a strong economy with good skills, but areas of deprivation, high house prices and countryside to protect. Housing affordability problem. At least 60% of our residents earn around £28,000. And when you want to buy a property, that doesn't buy an awful lot. Even the cheapest properties, you'd need a deposit of around £24,000 and income of about 40. The council got a very proactive policy approach. East Suffolk has, it's a district of two halves. We now have the adopted local plans. The council's strategic plan has an enabling communities as one of its themes. Within this, it says to enhance the place and live and work for well-being of all. This value runs through all the strategies before you. The district is covered by two local plans with supportive policies in both. These include options for people who wish to build their own home, whilst neighbourhood plans are encouraged to consider how community land trusts deliver housing and other infrastructure as communities identify. In addition, the housing strategy and the housing enabling strategy provide a greater emphasis and guidance to deliver these outcomes. The district boasts a strong sense of community. These are the neighbourhood plans that have been completed. SelfBuild neighbourhood plan is currently out for consultation and has policies within it that limit the use of assets of community value for the sole purpose of affordable housing for the town. And these have restrictive covenant occupancy clauses. They are used in the community land trust model to protect against the right to buy and homes being lost to the second or holiday home market. And this is a real problem for SelfBuild. Kessingland is also using the CLT model to deliver homes for local people. Several more parishes are writing their plans and support will be given to them around community-led housing models and policies. If SelfBuild's neighbourhood plan is made, with the policies remaining, I personally think that these could be encouraging other parishes to consider these form of restrictive policies to benefit their community. So I want to tell you about two specific community groups who are delivering affordable housing in their parishes. Firstly, SouthGen, they are based in SelfBuild. They use the government's community housing fund to convert open market homes into affordable homes in partnership with the local housing association. In addition, they raise community shares to deliver a cafe and children's nursery. The second group also used the Community Housing Fund to convert open market homes to affordable homes in their village. The Peninsula Villages CLT will own the land and lease it to a housing association who will then complete the build. This model will protect the homes from the right to buy and conversely, the second or holiday home market. These two exciting projects are led by ordinary people who could see a need in their area. Both are community benefit societies seeking to deliver homes and assets the community need. As part of the SouthGen project, space will be given for a library, whilst the cafe will provide an informal space for people to meet and access information. The Peninsula Villages Trust have a strategic view to deliver more homes in their area to meet local need. Both groups are democratic, empowering local people, raising skills, whilst reducing isolation and discrimination. Since my arrival at East Suffolk in February, I am pleased to say that progress is ongoing. I've so far provided training to members and officers on community-led housing models, whilst supporting several groups who are interested in delivering housing or other community assets. Policy work includes supporting neighbourhood plan groups and working with planning colleagues on the new affordable housing supplementary planning document. Thank you.
Many thanks, Stephanie, and I'm glad you got over the technology. Really good to hear of the work that you're doing there.
Thank you.
Let's head north now. We're heading up to Eden District Council, right up in the Lake District. Fantastic place to walk. But Kate Skillicorn, tell us about what you're up to.
Hi everyone, good morning. Can you see my screen there, the PowerPoint?
Yes, we can see it.
Great.
I think you're at the end of the presentation though.
Right, I have attempted to skip back to the start there. You should see some maps and the image of Striding Edge. Is that right?
No, we can't see that at the minute.
Oh, okay. Let's see.
You're on slide 5 at the minute for some reason.
Right, okay, yeah, I'll stop sharing and try again. It's telling me it's paused for some reason. Okay, how's that?
That's better. That's better.
Right, great. Okay, thank you. Apologies, everyone. Good morning, I'm Kate and I'm the Community-Led Housing Lead at Eden District Council in Cumbria. Eden is very rural. We have the lowest population density of any district in England and Wales. The district includes parts of the Lake District and Yorkshire Dales National Parks and the North Pennines area of outstanding natural beauty. Rurality presents its own challenges, and for us these include low seasonal wages in sectors such as tourism and agriculture, and in many parts of the district we have high house prices and high numbers of second homes, making housing inaccessible to many local households. So similar issues to some of the issues that's definitely described as occurring in East Suffolk. We have an ageing population in Eden, and the council has adopted a corporate ambition to attract and retain more young people and working age households. We've identified community-led housing as one of the key ways of doing that, because it gives people the option of building a home they love in the area where they want to live and work. So we developed our community-led housing programme following the receipt of funding from government during phase 1 of the Community Housing Fund. And in putting the programme together, we've tried to consider what barriers to developing community-led housing, what the barriers are to developing community-led housing locally. And we've also referred to existing sources such as the Cooperative Council's Innovation Network report, the Key Role for Local Authorities report that Nicola and Nick referred to earlier. The main elements of our community-led housing programme are really two things: our funding programme and establishing a supportive environment and a strong local infrastructure for community-led housing. So this is aimed at addressing those potential barriers, and locally those are land availability, and we've therefore aimed to develop relationships with landowners, unlocking sites that wouldn't otherwise come forward, and community group skills and confidence, which a local registered provider has been brilliant in addressing, and I'll touch on that shortly. So there are two key community-led housing projects currently underway in Eden. One in a village called Lazenby, which is a scheme for around 10 units on a brownfield site in the centre of the village, which has been derelict for some time, and the other in Patterdale. This is a screenshot from the Patterdale Parish Community Land Trust's website, and the land they're currently in the process of acquiring, following a wider public consultation, is located roughly behind the start of the word community in this image. So the main instigator of the Patterdale project, Maddie Teasdale, was a parish council member whose family has lived in the village for several generations. However, as she grew up, Maddie realised that despite being a key worker in the NHS, she was going to be the first generation of the family not to be able to afford to set up home independently because of the way house prices had increased. Around 50% of the homes in the village are now holiday homes, and median house prices are up to 12 times median local incomes. So to come back to registered provider support to groups, in Eden we see this as a key route to enabling groups to access technical support at a level that's right for them. With a number of small housing associations locally, however, Eden Housing Association has been especially proactive in developing a flexible, tailored approach to supporting community groups. So they've developed a range of options, all of which are up for negotiation and further tailoring according to a group's needs. And these range from option 1 on the spectrum shown here, where the community group takes on most aspects of the project, and Eden Housing picks up the management of the scheme once it's built out, to option 4, where the registered provider carries out all aspects of the scheme and retains a long-term interest in the scheme, and the community group has oversight of some key project elements such as design and the lettings approach. For community groups, this approach provides access to development support at the level they want. They can pick and choose the level that's right for their group, their skill set and so on. And the intention is it will scaffold the group's learning as they gain experience. So for their first project, the Patterdale CLT have chosen an approach somewhere around option 3, where they've got input into the design and lettings policy. I think input is probably not a strong enough word there, because really in reality it's control over that part of the process. And Eden Housing will lease the land from the Community Land Trust for a period of 125 years and fully fund the development of the scheme. So the Patterdale Community Land Trust's intention is that this will provide them with the experience to take on more of the development process themselves in their second project, which will be based on a site elsewhere in the village. The Community Land Trust have concentrated on recruiting members who might be future residents of the scheme, and particularly younger households, and are keen to use the opportunity of working with a registered provider to help develop these members' experience of the whole development process. The Lazenby project we have is somewhere between a 1 and 2 on this scale. This community group has concentrated on recruiting retired professionals and building a professional network, so they are keen to take on more of the project management themselves. I meet regularly with members of both groups, and both are continuing to feedback that they're very happy with the way they're working with the Housing Association. In summary, we feel this approach has a number of benefits for both community groups and registered providers, and we see it as a way of scaling up delivery of community-led housing locally. Thank you.
Great stuff. Thank you very much. And Hatterdale's a lovely place. I've been there many times, and I'm doing on walking holidays. It's a great place to visit.
Yeah.
But I think what's interesting about all three of the presentations so far is really illustrating the breadth of what's going on across the country in community-led housing. And it's almost like actually community-led housing is by definition, oops, that's my bloody phone, go away, is by definition, it's about local people working with local authorities to define things in their own way. And that's what, we're encouraging here, is it's about making that happen. Anyway, so our final speaker today is, we're going back down south to Bristol, and Kelly Thomas from Bristol City Council. Tell us about what you guys have been up to.
Hello there, hi. Kelly Thomas, Bristol City Council. I'm the lead at community-led housing within the city. So in Bristol, a few years ago, leading up to sort of 2016, we had quite an active movement, Roots Up, a lot of community groups coming forward and wanting to deliver affordable housing. And this kind of built momentum really, and there was a pressure building from the sector, which is where it all started. And there were two significant schemes in Bristol. One was the Bristol Community Land Trust, who built a 12-unit scheme in fish ponds for rent and shared ownership. Very successful scheme, communal gardens, self-finish, community involved from the start and engaged throughout, and a genuine community formed there. And the benefits of that were recognised. Community is needed at the moment. People don't just want a house, they want a community. And to build that community whilst you're building a home, it's there, it's entrenched. And it's what people need. We've got social isolation, we've got mental health, and especially after COVID, I don't know where the mental health of the country is going to be. People don't want to be living in a barrack home or a house they've just been allocated somewhere. It's community that's now needed in society. And so the fish pond scheme was developed, and there was also a private scheme that was developed which had quite a bit of influence, which was called the Yard in St. Werburgh's. So this was a piece of land within a community, and a community that had come together previously on various projects. And a developer wanted to buy the land to build properties for sale. And the community came together and said, no, we're not going to let that happen. We don't want that in the centre of our community, and we want to build our own project here. So just individuals came together, bought the land between them and built the Yard, which was 39 homes, all individually designed, sustainable, environmentally friendly. That community thrived. They had, workshops, so homes with workshops, and it's just a fantastic community. It just absolutely works. People feel secure there. They feel belonging there. It's not just somewhere you live and then move on when your finances allow. They'll probably stay there. So that was developed. That was 39 units, and that sector kind of grew, and they were approaching the council and saying, look, we need more of this, society needs more of this, the city needs more of this, and the housing market is broken. The housing market is just not working for so many people. It works for a few. Housing is an asset for a lot of people. It's an investment, and we all know the housing market's broken. The government admitted and written a paper on the broken housing market. And they were just saying, there needs to be an alternative, there needs to be something else, and we need to be able to do something about this for ourselves. We don't just want to be provided with housing, we want engagement, and we want you to work with us to be able to develop that for our well-being, for our purpose, for our mental health, and to deliver the homes we want and the community we want to live in. So the city listened, and the city said, fine, okay, we'll work with you. What do you need? What do you need to develop this? What do you need to grow? What can we do for you? And so basically they said, look, we want somebody in the council who's dedicated to this, because you know what it's like with councils, there's lots of silo working, it's very difficult to know who to communicate. And they said, we need somebody in the council that's dedicated to community-led housing that we can approach, and then that person then sort of takes us through the council and gets us through the systems and gives us support. So this was 2018 now, 2 years ago. So Homes England at the time had the Community Housing Fund. That's just gone, which is terrible for the sector as far as I'm concerned. That's just been taken away. It's a 2-year fund. Everybody knows development takes more than 2 years. We've had 2 years of funding, which was fantastic. and that funding could be used for groups to form and for groups to sort of get as far as planning, so all that pre-planning kind of work, which really enabled these roots up community people that would often do, you know, most of them were doing it voluntary in their spare time or whatever. It gave them some funding and some substance to actually get moving. So as a council, we applied to the fund and we got funding for my role, and I was placed in there as the community lead for Bristol, and all community groups could come to me to assist with whatever it was they were wanting to deliver. So that was the first way that the city assisted. So I've got like 25 years affordable housing development experience. So, you know, they've put somebody in there that can respond to the needs. The second thing they said they wanted was land. Land is obviously a big issue. And you know, without land, you can't build anything, and it's very difficult, especially in Bristol. Land values are high. It's a, you know, it's a scarce resource. It's difficult to get hold of. You know, it's very difficult for these groups to mobilise around that. Two groups achieved it, so you know it is achievable. But for many groups, it's very difficult to do. So the council did look at what land it could possibly provide in order to provide, you know, affordable housing delivery in return. So we've got Astry Close, Ambition Lawrence Weston in Lawrence Weston in Bristol is a group that were an established community group delivering all sorts of things already for the community, and they said, right, if we can get community homes funding, then you know we can do housing. And so you know we've got a circa 30 unit scheme going through planning at the moment with SelfBuild, a couple of self-builds with some affordable rent and shared ownership for the local people, at affordable rents. But the community have been engaged in that from start to finish, and that's it, local jobs, local supply, you know, it's a genuine roots up from the community design. And we've had, so what we did was we said, right, let's have some Pathfinder projects. So we had that one at Astry Close. We had another one, which was Southmead Development Trust, again, so an established community group who said, right, you know, we're unable to do housing now. So there's a piece of public open space there in Southmead called Glencoyne Square. And so basically we said, well, look, you know, if the community are bringing public land together and the community is saying this is what they want it for, this piece of land is just not used for anything. It's just a scrap of land, really. We're calling it public open space. It's not really used. And if the community want housing, so we back that, and it's got planning, and it's got planning for 120 units. That's 120 affordable units that would never have been delivered any other way. And the council transferred that land and the Astry Close land, provided the land for both schemes. And so significant numbers of affordable housing delivery coming through there, and community space on the ground floor and community facilities. There was another one, Sheldon Road, which was a 50 unit scheme that's with Bristol Community Land Trust. Again, shared ownership and rent. And three of the schemes we took as Pathfinder projects. We said, right, let's follow these through and we can do lessons learned, and then other groups can learn from these lessons, and the council can see how that we can integrate and how we can help. So there's the Astry Close, the Glencoyne Square, and then there was a project called We Can Make. So We Can Make is a project in Knoll West. So Knoll West is a deprived area of the city, low incomes, low employment, etc. But it's low density, so it's like the red brick old council housing where you've got huge back gardens. So the council and I are working with this organisation. It's Knoll West Media Centre is the established community group. They've set up We Can Make, which is now the Housing CIC, Community Interest Company, and we are taking these gardens voluntarily. People can come along and say, right, take my back garden, I'm overcrowded. Like the first one we're doing is a mother, daughter, grandkids, son lives there, grandkids, and it's all a bit overcrowded. So we're building a micro home in the back garden. It's a micro, so when I say micro home, it's 2 space standards, you know, it's 2-bed property, 2 national space standards in the rear garden, energy efficient, panelised housing, so MMC, you know, decent on the environment, built by local people. So Knoll West Media Centre have a factory, panelised housing, huge amount of employment. So they're making sure all the investment goes back into that deprived community. So the social value outputs coming out of that are absolutely huge. And we've got the first 2 in for planning. We expect to get planning literally next couple of weeks, and that's the first 2 that will go through. Homes England have funded the 16 unit pilot. So we're doing a pilot of 16 where we sort of get the system, how can it work, how can it flow between the council, the tenant, and all the rest of it. So that homeowner has first nomination right for the property. the CIC will eventually transfer all their units into a CLT, and they'll manage their homes on the micro plots going forward. But the affordability on that, so they're coming in at rents way below the local housing allowance and way below the affordable 80% of market value, which we all know isn't very affordable, especially in Bristol. You know, so they're coming in 35% of average incomes in the area. It's about, if I can get this right, it's about 50% of market value is where they were landing. So totally affordable, genuinely affordable units, lots of jobs, lots of input and all the rest of it. So, you know, these were our Pathfinder projects, and we followed them through, and we've had regular meetings with all three groups regularly to sort of say, right, what's working, what's not working, how can the council help you, etc. And then also on land, in February, we released a policy, the community-led housing land disposal policy. So in the council, if ever land comes available, it goes through something called a hopper, where we look at, right, what should it be used for? Should it be used for HRA delivery? Should it be used for, should we be selling it? What should we be doing it? And so now there's also the community-led housing pot, and there's the SelfBuild pot, because we're also doing a lot for SelfBuild sector at the minute as well. And so they get consideration in that process. And if something's suitable for community-led housing, it now goes through the community-led housing policy, where it's released purely to community groups. Only community groups can bid. And so we've got an eligibility criteria for that. So we're looking at co-ops, CICs, CLTs, charities, that sort of ilk. So they have to be eligible. It goes out on a system within the council, groups bid on them, and we do an assessment of that. And the bids are on, you know, what's being built, you know, what you're actually delivering there. Deliverability, we don't want these sites just hang around. These groups have to be able to deliver. The community benefit. So what that community group gets out of this at the end. So capacity building, you know, do they get units? Do they get revenue? Do they get, you know, what do they get from this process at the end of it? We don't want it that they just build something, and, you know, we want to build capacity through this process so that groups can thrive in the future and deliver more of this for their communities. And social value outputs. So I'm so chuffed. We've just done our first release of 11 sites, and the bids are in, and the social value outputs are huge. You know, what's going to spill over into the local community, the social value outputs within the scheme. Really chuffed, because obviously first time going, we didn't really know what was going to come through. And there's real innovation, there's real sustainability, real environmental factors, affordability, it's all there. You know, a huge amount of voluntary work in, and it's giving these people purpose, and it's giving them pride, and it's giving them, you know, they're solving their own housing need, and they're loving it, you know. And it's just so amazing to see that this is actually making people happy. You know, it's not about pounds and pence and GDP, it's about happiness, and it's about, you know, what really works for people. And we're genuinely seeing that come through from these schemes. So we're about to make announcements now about which groups got what sites, and then we'll support those groups through to delivering those. So another thing they said was, look, grant funding, you know, the RP sector gets grant funding. Can we have funding? Because we want to make these units affordable. And the city has a funding pot that is for RPs, and RPs can bid in and get funding to deliver affordable units. So we've just adjusted that policy to make it also that community groups are eligible. So, you know, the same level of funding as an RP would get for a scheme, so they can bid in for that. So for affordable rent and for equity share units, those two tenures. We didn't do shared ownership because whether you're an RP or not, you can go to Homes England and get shared ownership funding. So we left that to them. But a community group, if they're not an RP, can't go to Homes England and get funding for rental units. So that's why we tried to fill that gap and enable that funding. And they also said, look, we want our social value to be recognised. We want that to be something that counts. You know, we're delivering all this extra social value, and we want it to be seen, and we want it to count. So within our land disposal policy, we've enabled that under the Local Government Act 2000, the council can, under sort of the premise of well-being for economic, social, environmental factors, the council can dispose of land below market value. And so what we've said is we're going to look at the social value outputs of these schemes in our land transactions. And so we are therefore able to sell the land to groups at a value that works for them based on the value outputs that they're generating. So it's just monetizing social value, which is ever so difficult to do. And there's all sorts of social value tools. Bristol City Council has got a social value policy, and a tool, and we've kind of utilised that because it was there and we didn't want this to take 10 years. So we've utilised what's there, and it's kind of worked to facilitate this. But, you know, we need to, you know, it's done the job. It could be better. There needs to be a social value tool specifically for social housing. And then the other big thing that we did was the hub. So they said, going forward, my role's going to end soon. They want some support. So we've set up, or we didn't set up, they set themselves up under BCRT, the West of England hub. So the West of England hub will now support these groups going forward with, you know, sources of funding, sources of advice, and all the rest of it to support those groups going forward. So those are the key things that we've kind of been, I can see Nick's giving me the chop now, so I think I've run out of time. So anyway, that'll give you a flavour for the kind of work we've been doing, hopefully. So thank you.
I mean, wow, Kelly. I mean, it's an amazing story, and I'm sorry to have cut you off, but I mean, it's not just that we've overrun, but we're almost at the end of our period of time. So I just thought we needed to.
You need to cut it off, just keep going and going. So
yeah, well, I'm a bit like that as well. So look, I mean, I think we've heard some great stories there of things going on in different parts of the country. I mean, all of them quite different because obviously everybody's coming from different areas. And but I think it's, you know, it's what I said earlier, the art of the possible, you know, people just using really creative approaches to make these things happen. So I mean, we've got 5 minutes, which obviously if people wish to sort of comment or questions or anything like that, I mean, I'm sure that all of our panelists would be happy to talk to people individually after the session. Can we share the panelists' emails? Is that okay for the panelists? If we share emails so that people can get in touch with you and have a chat with you if you want more details specifically of what you've heard of. Does anyone wish to throw in any comments or questions at this point? But obviously we have to keep it brief because we've only got 4 minutes now. And I'm rabbiting on too long. Anybody want to say anything? We stunned you into silence. I mean, obviously one of the key objectives of this session was that we really do want to encourage councils who are not part of the community-led housing local authority group to get on board with it, you know, and it doesn't cost anything. And basically in terms of signing up to it, all you're doing is saying that you're interested in community-led housing. And, you know, the group is, you know, we're trying to work out what it does, but I think it's a mixture of sort of promoting community-led housing generally alongside, you know, practical sessions on things of interest to councils to work out how they can support community-led housing better. So in fact, the next session that we've got, which I think is on the 10th of December, is going to be Matt Dodd from Homes England and Nigel Kersey from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government talking about where the government is at now in terms of capital funding and in terms of, you know, what the government's, you know, support for community-led housing is going to be, you know, moving forward. So I think that will be quite an interesting session. So, you know, maybe those of you who are not part of the group at the minute, please just get in touch with me. And to get in touch with me, all you need to do is send me an email address, and I'll put you on the database, or officers working for you if you prefer. Please do. Hard sell on the group. Doesn't cost you anything. Get in touch. Okay. Do you want to say a couple of words, Nicola, just to conclude? You're muted.
Thank you very much, Nick. Just wow, just thought it was awesome, and it would be brilliant for those councils that are part of the network if we could have case studies on some of the things that you're delivering. And if you've got any ideas, those that are participants on this session and you're going, well, we do something very similar to that, how can we share our good practice as well? So, you know, 2 takeaways: join the local authority group. I've put Nick's contact details and all of the other speakers' details into the chat box, and send any case studies to me. We've got over 300 on the councils.coop website, and we'd love to have more just to share the great things that you're doing. So thank you very much, Nick, for the opportunity today, and thank you very much to our wonderful speakers for preparing your presentations for today, and for giving us your valuable time, and for everybody else who's listened in, thank you as well.